I'm excited to jump in. What I'll do is share my screen and just kind of walk you through if you're a visual person. I've got, a PowerPoint, of course, to kind of help with that. So let me go ahead and I'll share this, make myself the only picture there for you. Okay, and we'll get started. Okay, so, oops, there's someone waiting. Okay. All right, jumping in. Today I am talking about your gut, and it really is the missing piece for so many women when they're dealing with chronic symptoms, bloating, weight gain, feeling tired all the time, mood swings. And the issue that I've seen and why I wanted to do this webinar is because if you go to your doctor, just talk or Google social media, anything like that, and look up these symptoms, you're probably told it's your hormones. It's your hormones, especially if, we're aging and possibly in perimenopause or menopause, you're told it's your hormones. The problem, though, is that hormones are our communication system. They're communicators. So if there's a problem with the hormones, there's likely a bigger, deeper underlying issue that needs to be addressed too. And so what can happen is maybe someone goes to the doctor and they're, explaining these symptoms and the doctor says, "Oh, it's your hormones," and prescribes some hormone therapy. I'm not against hormone therapy. I actually really am for hormone therapy for protection and just helping women to feel their best as we age. But if you throw hormones on top of a deeper issue, such as poor gut health or inflammation, sluggish detox, nutrient deficiency, one of these foundational issues is out of whack, and you try to throw hormones on top of it, what happens is one, the woman either doesn't feel any better and thinks hormones don't work, or two, she might even feel worse because that underlying issue was not fixed. And then she feels worse when she starts hormones and she thinks hormone therapy again is not for me, throws it out the window and never comes back to it. So this is why it's so important to me. Gut health has always been a topic, a core topic that I talk about and I teach in my Foundations of Hormone Balance program because it has such a strong correlation with our hormones. So we're going to talk about that today and just, like I said, three specific areas that would be most important to start our focus and give our attention to. I wanted to share, now I'm not going to get too sciencey on you, I promise, but I wanted to share just a diagram, and this is going to pop up before each topic so that you kind of get that reminder. Just of when you hear me talking about digestion and gut health and microbiome, if you're a visual learner, I want you to kind of be able to visualize what we're talking about here. So, really, gut health is the entire GI tract, from your mouth to the esophagus, stomach, through the intestines, and then out of the body through bowels. So, digestion is kind of that early part where we're looking at the esophagus, the stomach, and then into the small intestine for absorption of nutrients. And then when we're talking more of detox and even the gut brain axis, that's going to be deeper in like the large intestine colon area. So that is this big, big kind of outlining all the small intestine. This is your large intestine. And so, like I said, before each topic that we run into, I'll kind of pull this back up and have an arrow of exactly what part we're talking about. But one thing I wanted to note before we start, especially for women, is that our microbiome shifts as we age because it is so sensitive and affected by so many different factors. So, what we see is that as people age, their microbiome declines. The amount of beneficial bacteria, the diversity of it, it all starts to fall. And the microbes and microbiome, so that healthy bacteria, it has such an important role in our overall health and function of our body. So everything from our mood to our energy to our metabolism to our gut health, of course, like digestion, but then also inflammation, nutrients. We're going to kind of talk more about that stuff, but it's so important that we have as healthy and diverse population of microbes working for us in our microbiome throughout our entire life. So for women in particular, we see a significant shift and decline in that perimenopause to menopause window. And that's because of that connection with hormones. And so it's not something that you have to experience because as soon as you know there's this big shift, you know that the microbiome declines when we're in this area of our hormones dropping, you can do something about it. So you can be proactive, you can really work and prioritize your gut health at this point. So it's not something that needs to happen, it's just a trend that we see, something very significant that seems to happen naturally when those hormones drop. So that's kind of the cue as to like, okay, I need to step up my focus on gut health and make sure I'm doing everything that I can. So, signs and symptoms of poor gut health, I thought this would be good just to kind of bring up. I'm not going to run through all of these, but I want you just to take a look through them. Even just having one of these symptoms is indicating that we've got some sort of gut dysfunction, whether it's in the digestion, the early phase, or it's in the small intestine or large intestine, we have some sort of dysfunction. Okay, so these symptoms, these signs, they're signals from the body that something's going on, and they're not to be pushed aside because they will continue to build and worsen. So some of these you'd have to get labs done, like the nutrient deficiencies or the inflammatory markers, of course. But the other ones kind of seem common, and they are. So they because they're common, it's kind of this thing where people might just push them aside. You know, it's uncomfortable, they kind of get in the way of your day, but you can get through it. And I think what I see a lot too with women and experience myself as well is, you know, you wake up in the day and life comes at you, you're busy. Maybe you don't even really pay attention or recognize these symptoms until the end of the day. You get home, you're kind of resting, you're like, oh, I'm bloated. I don't feel good. I'm super tired. Like, I don't want to feel like this. I want to do something about it. And then you go to bed, you wake up the next day, and life comes at you again. You get busy, and you're like, okay, yeah. And it just keeps getting pushed off and off and off. So that's where I hope today, as we talk through symptoms and areas that we want to be, you know, making sure to support and keep healthy, that you stop pushing these symptoms off and make sure, you know, I'm going to do something about this and let's, you know, keep gut health a priority. So hopefully, you know, like I said, these symptoms definitely can pop up. Our gut is so susceptible to so many factors and things that we come in contact with daily. But today, like I said, to keep me on track, to keep this within an hour, I'm going to just pull on three different functions of the gut. So we have digestion, which is breaking down food, but it also includes absorbing nutrients. So that takes place in the small intestine. When we've got digestive issues, I just wanted to put the most common symptoms I see tied with that. Bloating, absolutely. Pain, like just uncomfortable, feeling full quickly, and reflux are the most common. The second topic we'll run into is gut-brain axis. So this is to me is one of the most exciting um, areas, and it's so well researched, is that signaling from our gut to our brain that happens along the vagus nerve and how directly our microbiome health can impact our mood and our thinking, anxiety, depression, sleep, and even your resilience to stress. So if you feel like you kind of lost that resilience to stress, like that can also be the microbiome. And then thirdly, we're going to talk through detox, which is really that binding elimination that takes place in the colon, eliminating toxins, waste, but just everyday like metabolic waste that the body produces. And also, you know, things that come in through our GI tract from outside. And the symptoms I see there, you know, fatigue, constipation, weight gain, absolutely, and hormone issues. And we'll talk about why specifically with that. So we'll go ahead and jump in. Here's this graphic again. So this blue arrow is where we're talking. So digestion is going to be the stomach, so esophagus, stomach, and then into the small intestine for that absorption. Okay. And the craziest thing with the small intestine to have you think about is look at your abdomen, look at your stomach. If you took your small intestines and totally flattened them out, all the little folds and villi within your intestine, your small intestine could cover a tennis court. That is a lot of intestine and tissue for it to have all squished up within your stomach, your abdomen. So I want you just to keep that in mind when I'm talking through kind of digestive symptoms and what we want to do for making sure to support that and heal the gut because it is incredibly important and it is a huge part of our body. So when we are eating and drinking and even breathing, things are coming into our system. And our GI tract and our gut is really the entryway into the body. And because of that, it gets beat up. It really can take a toll. Our environment, unfortunately, has just continued to get um, more toxic. Not like I don't want to make this a fear monger thing or anything, but we just know chemicals are starting to build up with people. Now, when we do toxin testing and we measure this stuff, even just through the urine, we see the amounts of forever chemicals and BPA and glyphosate and pesticides, herbicides, those types of things that are coming into our GI tract. They do damage. Okay, so throughout that esophagus to stomach, all along the intestines, they can damage that tissue. And so just being aware of that is kind of one of the reasons where when I'm working with clients, we'll address specific symptoms that they're having right now, like bloating and constipation. These are things absolutely we'll address. But we need to also, after you're feeling good, keep in mind, like this is more of, here's what we're going to do for long term, for preventing, to help come back and help the gut heal so that we don't fall back down that slippery slope. So there's kind of the acute stuff that we'll do for gut healing and supporting digestion, but then there's also that longer term. We have to remember this is ongoing. Our gut doesn't stop getting damaged, unfortunately. So we have to kind of stay on top of that. So, one of the number one things and issues that I see in my clients is that stress and just this more of this low grade, elevated nervous system being turned on. That is where the body starts to decrease and decrease and decrease the amount of digestion it can even do. And so women start to lose the amount of stomach acid that is present in their stomach. They start to lose the amount of bile and enzymes that are being produced and pushed out to break down your meals because of this more sympathetic nervous system state that you're spending the entire day in. So I think we all know stress, right? If you have a busy day or you get to work and it's like one problem after another getting thrown in your face, it's like, yes, you can pinpoint that as stressful. But what gets really hard to identify is that chronic heightened state of your nervous system, because that is something that we can just become comfortable with. Like, oh yeah, I kind of have a busy life. There's a lot on my plate, but I get through it. It's been like this for years. I'm doing fine. What we don't notice is, hey, I've totally lost communication and being able to, um, it's just like connect with your nervous system. So what we call nervous system regulation. And it kind of sounds, maybe hard, but it's not. It is just your regular day-to-day habits that you can be doing to help your nervous system basically switch on and off. So what the typical day can look like is, again, you wake up, life starts, you switch that light switch on, you're in the sympathetic nervous system, go, go, go. It's where you're driving, you're making decisions, you're at work or you're with the kids or whatever you're doing, you're on, okay? When you have that nervous system sympathetic on, you're not going to be digesting. Okay, that is your fight or flight. That's your response. Where you digest is in your parasympathetic nervous system. So your rest and digest. Think of it that way. So you have to flip the light switch off to get there. And if not, then again, you lead to bloating. Bloating leads to larger food particles. You're not breaking those down with digestion. That damages and leads to constipation. And it's kind of like this waterfall effect. So one of the first places that I start with women is, yes, I do specific with maybe a digestive aid they can take with their meals so that when you eat, you have everything within your stomach to properly break down. So a good comprehensive digestive aid that's got some hydrochloric acid, some ox bile, and digestive pancreatic enzymes, like that can be specific and working on the immediate symptom. But we need to also then be working on that underlying reason as to why digestion is poor. That's your nervous system, typically. So for nervous system regulation, that's a big focus. My number one tip, though, and this is so important, the nervous system, that I made that into its own workshop back in January. So if you need to work through nervous system regulation, it is built to be easy to follow, easy to implement, really finding what works for you and your schedule and your personality to really start switching that nervous system on and off. And that's what regulation means. But for everybody, where you can start would be that deep breathing before you eat. And it's that signal to your body. You take a couple real deep breaths, which mean you can hold your breath and you can slowly exhale it. Doing that a few times before eating can help switch, tell your body, like, hey, everything's safe. We can move into the parasympathetic state. That is our digest state. And now you can eat and be in a better place. Now, nervous system regulation is a lot more than breathing. It's not just deep breathing, but that's usually the first place I recommend and most providers you hear talk about because nobody can come back and be like, I don't have time to breathe. We all have to breathe every single day, all day. So if I start there, you can't tell me you don't have time for it. And it actually is extremely effective. So I hope that that is one that you take to heart and you start. And at the end of the webinar, I'll kind of recap all of the tips. But I hope you take this one into action and start trying this, especially before any of your bigger meals like dinner or lunch or wherever you feel like you might be the most in that heightened nervous system state. Even more important that you're doing the deep breathing before you eat. But I mentioned the damage that can happen within that small intestine because food doesn't get broken down well enough. If the particles aren't small enough, then as they go through your small intestine, one, you're not going to absorb the nutrients. And you probably did a good job at choosing healthy foods to eat. But if you have poor digestion, your nervous system's a wreck, you're not going to break down that food small enough. You're not going to absorb those nutrients, and they're going to cause damage. So the breathing helps to improve the digestion. We can go further with like digestive aids and some more stuff too, but that's more on a personal, client to client basis. But then you want to take into consideration healing. How can you help to support your gut and your body to heal that lining that's been damaged? So again, there can be specific, depending on the severity and how long things have been going on, I might recommend, a specific powder blend of something that's going to give higher amounts of gut healing nutrients. But simple foods to start with would be things like ginger, which you can add to your food, or you can add fresh ginger to your water. So you can get that ginger root at the store and just slice that or grate that and use recipes and sauces and drinks, or just put it in your water to help bring that ginger and that soothing gut healing nutrients in. Aloe vera's another great one. So that is a mucilage, which means it kind of comes in and coats the GI tract. So that can be really helpful again for preventing things from damaging. So aloe vera you can just get as aloe vera juice and drink a little bit of that prior to eating meals, again, especially before your bigger ones like lunch or dinner. Fennel is one of my favorites. It does taste like black licorice, but mild. I would never eat black licorice, but I like fennel. But the fennel seeds is actually one popular in Indian culture for eating. So if you've ever been to an Indian restaurant and they put like a little bowl of fennel seeds out, that's because it's really helpful and soothing for digestion. So this is just your fennel seeds you can get in a spice, and taking a little bit of that, like a teaspoon, and chewing on fennel after a meal can be also helpful in calming and healing the gut. And then peppermint is one that has been very helpful for people. There's actually a medication, and if you look at the medications, like doctors will prescribe a medication and you look at it, it's peppermint oil as the ingredient. So peppermint is extremely helpful, especially with like IBS and some IBD conditions as well. So you can do peppermint tea. That's kind of an easy one. Plus, it freshens your breath. Fennel freshens your breath too. So these are two good ones to do after your meal. And then I just made a note, foods might need to be adjusted. If I'm working with someone, maybe we've done a gut health test, like a stool test, and we know SIBO is present or leaky gut or more inflammatory or something like that. some of these foods may need to be adjusted, but this is generally for most people you'll be able to tolerate, and these foods can help to improve gut health. Oop. All right, back to the image because we're going on to number two, the gut-brain axis. So this to me, like I said, is one of, I think, the coolest research areas to look into. So for the gut-brain, we know there's a very strong connection and communication between our microbiome, so the gut bacteria, and our brain. So that's why for this, the arrow is from the colon. So when you hear microbiome, it's everything around the body, in the body. But typically, and today when I'm talking microbiome, we're talking about the colonies within the colon here. This is where the highest concentration and the most diversity of bacteria reside, okay? So right in the large intestine in the colon. And then we've got our vagus nerve that connects to the brain. And so it is very real when you hear gut-brain communication. And you've probably experienced it if you've ever been like anxious or excited and you feel like your stomach has the butterflies or it's just flipping. That's because of that vagus nerve, that communication. So on that front, your brain is communicating to your gut. But it works the other way all the time. So with that, the beneficial bacteria, the keystone species, the good bacteria, they actually, when they're alive, so they're eating fibers and prebiotics, and what they metabolize, so what comes out of that is things that benefit us. And that's why we call them beneficial bacteria. Because as they're just living their life within our colon, we're feeding them all the good food, the prebiotics and fibers that they like. And as they eat it, they're metabolizing and creating things that benefit us, like vitamins, vitamin K, B vitamins, melatonin, but they also create neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine and GABA. And these neurotransmitters, these are our calming, our happy, our reward dopamine. So dopamine is like that reward. Serotonin's are calming. GABA is such a good calming neurotransmitter as well. So if you're struggling with anxiety or mood swings, even attraction to others, it can be a sign of poor microbiome health. Irritability, fatigue, so low energy, depression, absolutely. I mean, the research that we see come out of this is so incredibly concrete and builds upon itself that we just can't deny it anymore. So I hope, I know this isn't the case, but I hope that in some cases, before a woman gets put on an antidepressant, anti-anxiety, she is able to get directed into this, the different options she can do to try to help improve these neurotransmitters rather than just taking a medication. Because I cannot tell you how many women come to me and they're already on SSRIs, something like sertraline. And what an SSRI is it's basically keeping serotonin, or some of them are norepinephrine, or it's keeping them recycling. So keeping them from breaking down and eliminating from the body. So just keep recycling that serotonin around, you're going to feel better. And the myth with that is that that medication, that's all it's going to do. You take that medication, it's just going to keep the serotonin recycling and make you feel better and not have these, not have anxiety or these moods. That's just not true. And that's not true with any medication, right? It's always going to have a waterfall effect. It's always going to lead to more response within the body than just what that medication is prescribed to do. And that's because, again, neurotransmitters, hormones, their communication. So the one, I think probably the most significant side effect that I see with women that are put on SSRIs is weight gain. And it is extremely difficult weight gain, like weight gain that just does not budge for anything that we do. So I'm so glad when women do come to me and they say, I want to get off this SSRI. And I'm like, great. Because sometimes it can take like 3, 4, 5 months after someone stopped the SSRI for their body to finally start responding and allowing that weight to come off. But I just, want to make this very clear that there are so many things that we can do hormones play a role, and then also our microbes and specific probiotics that have been clinically tested to improve mood. Um, so it's to me very promising, very exciting that we can work with God's design and not try, putting a medication in. It can be beneficial. I'm not against medication by any means, but I hope that women are getting direction and, educated into how they can exhaust all the natural options that we can do first before going to a medication. And then that microbiome, it can be altered, as we mentioned, by so many things. But this works for us good and bad, right? So the microbiome tends to, what we see, it kind of turns over every 2 weeks. In some factors, it can change within days, and that means the types and amounts of bacteria present in that microbiome shifts from days to weeks. But on average, I kind of see 2 weeks being kind of that turning point. So that can be bad when you're like, oh, I just slipped and I fell off my healthy eating, or I started eating out more, and it's really just been 2 weeks, but all of a sudden now I'm noticing all these symptoms and it's not improving. Um, so it can change for the bad, but it can also change for the good. So when we start doing beneficial things, adding in maybe probiotics, maybe something specific for the symptoms that you're dealing with, or we start eating healthy, adding in more of those prebiotic fibers to help the bacteria grow and stay healthy, you can see improvements pretty quickly as well with probiotics. So that is a positive. So as I mentioned, we can get very specific. And when I'm working with a patient and we have symptoms, or maybe we have further testing or something to go off of, um, I'll be more specific in like recommending a probiotic that's going to have the strains and the blends and the volume that we want for to improve the symptoms. Or, teaching them to make their own yogurt at home, which can take your yogurt in the grocery store at 20 billion CFUs. So that's how we measure the amount of probiotics. So the yogurt in the grocery store at 20 billion CFUs to making your own home yogurt at home, and that's up to like 100 to 200 billion CFUs. So you can get a lot more effect with your homemade yogurt. So like teaching women that kind of stuff, but where everybody can start today is adding in probiotic rich foods, fermented foods, if you don't already eat these. If you do, maybe it's bringing a couple new ones into your routine. So fermented foods, these probiotic rich foods, are not only helpful in, bringing beneficial bacteria into that microbiome, but they are also gut healing. So they're going to help anytime you're bringing the good guys in, it can kind of help crowd out the bad guys. So this is a good place to start because hopefully we don't have to go deeper into, really a clearing out or a detox of harmful bacteria. But sometimes that is present if we've got dysbiosis or SIBO or one of these other conditions at play that we identify. But starting with fermented foods and probiotics is a good place. So yes, this includes yogurt, kefir, kombucha, those types of things. But one of my favorites that I would highly recommend if you don't do would be fermented vegetables. And that's because vegetable fermenting happens differently than the kombucha or yogurt and dairy. Yogurt, dairy, kombucha, they ferment from sugar, but your fermented vegetables ferment by salt. So you get this lactic acid bacteria blend, and that is very beneficial and one that we don't get enough of usually across the board. So add in some fermented vegetables. This can be like sauerkraut, this can be kimchi, this could be more diverse things like shredded carrots or beets I see as well. So there's local um, local small companies that make fermented vegetables that you might find in some of the more natural grocery stores. But in all of the grocery stores, you should be able to at least find kimchi and sauerkraut, probably. So even like my Metro Market down the road, I can get kimchi from there, and they have mild. So kimchi can get spicy. If you like spicy, perfect. I am not good with spicy, so I do a mild kimchi. And just even, one big spoonful, about 2 tablespoons worth, can be enough to start turning over that microbiome for the good in 2 weeks. So hopefully you can start adding some new fermented veggies into your day. All right, the third function of the gut is detox. And detox, you see the arrow here. The liver is not part of your digestive tract, but when we're talking detox, we there's, more to it. But in terms of the GI tract, the liver will package up what needs to leave the body and dump it into the intestines. It has to go through the GI tract and out through bowel movements. So, with that in mind, constipation as a symptom absolutely needs to be addressed first. Anytime I get a new client in and they have constipation, that is number one, what we're clearing up, because it is so detrimental to everything else that we want to do. Because if you think of everything I've kind of talked about today, the things that come in through our food and water and environment, unfortunately, enters the body has to get that out. The only way to do that effectively, some detox goes through the kidneys, but a lot goes through the GI tract. And so you need the right amount of fiber to bulk, to bind and bulk. And then you need the right bacteria to be working for us and not against us. So in our microbiome and in our colon, we have different types of bacteria. I've talked about the beneficial type, right? So when we have the right beneficial type and enough of them, when they're metabolizing and living, they're creating things that are good for us, benefiting us, the vitamins, the minerals, the neurotransmitters that are helping. When we have the harmful bacteria, what we kind of group into gram-negative bacteria, they create this environment that's more inflammatory. When they eat things, and they really like sugar and carb breakdown, but when they eat things, what they build as metabolites are called lipopolysaccharides, LPS, and these are damaging. They are damaging to the tissue, but the other dangerous part is that throughout our entire GI tract and intestines, there's a gut lining, and on the other side of that gut lining is our bloodstream. And so if we've got too much of the harmful bacteria, also grouped in there that likes that same environment is yeast and fungi and other microbes that are harmful. They're going to create these endotoxins, these harmful metabolites, and they can easily cross into our bloodstream. And that's why when we have dysbiosis and microbial issues, which unfortunately I'm seeing more and more often, the symptoms can be everything all over the body. They can be headaches and migraines. They can be skin rashes. They can be, what do I think? Fatigue. They can be pain, like joint pain. I mean, the symptoms go on and on to everything because the root issue is the microbes, right? We either have infection, like a parasite or viral or other pathogen infection, or we have an overgrowth where an overgrowth of harmful bacteria, an overgrowth of yeast. And because of that, we have this large amount of endotoxins being produced. They can get out into our bloodstream and then cause the symptoms that we're experiencing. So, with being able to properly eliminate what needs to get out of the body as quickly as we can on a daily basis, it is extremely important. So, constipation, number one, needs to be addressed. And I think the dangerous thing with constipation is like, you have constipation if you go 2, 3 days or longer without a bowel movement. But there's also this silent constipation where people might be having a bowel movement, most days, but they're not fully eliminating. And usually when I ask that question, women know, like they can tell me like, yes, I have a bowel movement most days. No, I don't, I'm not fully eliminating. Or it doesn't feel like that. That also is constipation. So that also is, hey, something we need to start improving. And then from there, we can start really working on the microbiome and the microbes, bacteria that we have there. So there's another part, hormone-wise, in that third bullet, that I want to just make a point of. We have a group of bacteria that actually play a huge role in our estrogen metabolism. And for women, this is important because we have so much estrogen, so many estrogen receptors around the body. And if we don't have the right type of bacteria, even within the microbiome in the colon, the body can do everything it needs to do, liver and enzymes to break down and move excess estrogen out. But when it hits the colon, the wrong type of bacteria can actually recirculate estrogen back into your bloodstream. And then women end up in this estrogen dominant state, which falls into all the topics and symptoms that we first started with: fatigue and weight gain, especially, and bloating and mood swings, that type of thing all fall with that estrogen dominance. So, again, just another way that we know that strong connection between microbes and our hormones. So, what to do first? I mentioned addressing constipation and not just putting more Miralax. um, I get it, Miralax helps, but it is not solving our problem by any means. So, again, we got to start back. We're the first bullet point on digestion. How are we supporting digestion? How is our nervous system? Are we truly regulating there? Dietary factors. How can we bump up that soluble fiber? How much fiber are you getting in the day? Um, and helping to just move through fluids, hydration. I mean, all of these might sound basic, but if any one of these are slipping or not really up to where we need to be, we're going to have issues with constipation, and therefore we have issues with the detox, and then your symptoms like bloating and all of that start to build. Okay, so I'm gonna jump back into the things to start doing. So don't worry, I'll do a little conclusion on that. But I just wanted with this webinar for you to really know that your symptoms, they're not random, they're not in your head, but they're also not to be pushed aside. They can feel kind of, hey, it's always been there. I've always been constipated, or I've always had bloating. It's just my body. They truly are signs, and we do want to dig deeper so that you don't end up, um, with symptoms and bigger issues. And particularly for women, what I see is when the gut gets damaged enough and we get that leaky gut, things are really crossing into the bloodstream. Unfortunately, your immune cells are also kind of right outside that gut lining. And this is, I mean, I see women, their autoimmune conditions start to get diagnosed, and you get one, and then you get another, and it just feels like this uphill battle that you'll never win. But if we can start addressing these symptoms earlier on, we can prevent all of that from building and occurring. Okay, so I know this was a lot of information. Let me just see. I think I stayed on track with my notes. But yeah, I just wanted also to say, don't try to push symptoms off for too long, because if you feel like it's not a good time right now, there's never a good time. Um, and my life is really busy right now in particular. There's like a lot of big events on top of each other, but that doesn't mean I'm forgetting about my gut health and pushing that aside because I'm busier. It actually means I'm bringing that to the forefront. And another reason why I'm like, this is a perfect time to be talking about gut health and what we can be doing, because I'm there right now where I'm like, I know that burden on my nervous system, and what I'm carrying is more, which means my focus on gut health and what I need to be doing, needs to step up, because that's how closely connected and damaged the gut can be anytime that we have that higher nervous system kind of stress. Okay, so this is our overview of what I talked about, things that everybody can start right away to truly be helping their body digest and heal the gut and start just kind of seeing momentum in that area. So, number one, the 3 deep breaths. Again, you can't tell me you don't have time to breathe, but I do hope that this kind of inspires you to go deeper, where deep breathing is not all there is to nervous system regulation. And if you want to learn more about what you can do and really how you can start to build in daily habits into your life, no matter how busy, I do have that nervous system workshop. So that can be just an easy 3-4 weeks for you to work through that, and get going with the nervous system regulation. So that's habit number one, especially before eating. Number two, drink at least 75 ounces of water. So this is one where if you're already drinking 75 ounces of water and you feel like you're constipated or maybe water retention or something like that, then you need more. So 75 ounces of water being your first goal, but then try to bump it up to see. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, especially if you hold water, like water retention in the body, but it's not. More water, higher hydration is going to help clear water retention. The reason the body does that is because there's inflammation. So again, that's the deeper root reason of water retention. Um, the body, when it has inflammation present, it tries to dilute it by pulling more water there. So it's pulling water out of your GI tract, out of your colon, and that's when constipation can get worse and things like that. So bump up that water, especially summertime. Habit number three, start working on increasing your fiber. If you do any kind of like food tracking, you can see, where exactly am I in getting fiber in the day, but working on increasing that, especially your soluble fiber. That's what helps to make bowel movements more softer and easier to pass. So soluble fiber, vegetables are a great source of that. So that's kind of an easy thing to focus on rather than telling you, 10 different foods to be adding. Focus on just getting more vegetables into your day. I kind of threw the goal out there of 5 servings in the day, so that can be a good place to start. Um, when working with a client, obviously we'll be more specific if you want more specific and what you should be eating or how you can add that into your day. That's exactly, what I can work with you on. And then habit number 4, incorporating gut healing foods. So remember those fermented foods, the probiotics like yogurt and kefir but more specifically, I want you to be doing the fermented vegetables. So look at your grocery store or farmer's market and see where you can get some. And then the other gentle healing foods would be things like the ginger root, the aloe vera juice you can drink a little before the big meals. Fennel and peppermint would be ones you can do post meal to help. So fennel would be the fennel seeds you can chew. Peppermint you can do as peppermint tea. So these are kind of the 4 habits you can start doing right now just to get you going on the right track. But I know that this, life is busy, and I'm sure maybe you can get started. Maybe hopefully you're feeling motivated right now and knowing like, yes, I want to be working on this and focused on gut health. So you start, but then of course life comes up and you stop and then you start again. It just feels like, you're struggling on the own, or life is just getting hectic. Maybe you're not sure exactly what to eat. What foods should I be eating? What should my day look like? Are there specific supplements I should be taking? I mean, all of that is specific to you and something that I would need to be more, aware of symptoms that are going on. I don't want to just blanket tell anyone to take a supplement, but these are all things that we can absolutely work on and talk about more together. I do want to note, though, I will be running a gut healing workshop this summer. So that'll be coming up. I don't have a specific date yet. So if you're interested in it and you have, maybe a time in the summer, they're like, hey, this would be good. I'll take that into consideration. So email me, info@lizreason.com, and I'll take that into consideration. But I'll be sharing information soon on that gut healing workshop, what that would look like, and when that would be in the summer. But it's going to be 3 weeks, and 3 weeks where we just build upon each week what we're doing. So addressing calming inflammation and digestion, healing the gut, soothing the gut, and then really starting to build up that microbiome. And then the 4th week will just be set aside for like Q&A and, next steps, anything like that, questions that you have. So it'll be 4 weeks, but really just 3 weeks of teaching, and the 4th week open for Q&A. But yeah, I'm excited. I love the workshops because they're live, and I literally am building them as we're working through it. And so it really allows me to tailor things to the women that are in the workshop and what they need and the questions they're asking. So it's fun, it's supportive, and it's, not stressful. We'll just slowly build up each week on what's going on there. So reach out to me if you're interested in that, and have a specific date in mind. Otherwise, I will be sending out info on that soon. And just know too, I am here. If you have questions, you want to talk more about something, or if you want to dig deeper, maybe you want to look at testing and what the microbiome looks like for you, whether there's harmful pathogens present, overgrowth, or even just looking at like beneficial microbes, the keystone species, and the balance between everything. We can absolutely go deeper into like a gut health test. The one I run is a stool test, very comprehensive. But if you're interested in that, I can also share information on that and kind of a sample report. So, yes, I am here. I'm available. I hope this webinar, I know it was packed with information, so I hope you were able to take some things away and can get started on some of these initial gut healing supplements and foods to to incorporate. So thank you guys so much for joining, and I hope to talk with you soon. Please, please reach out with any questions. I'm happy to talk with you more about anything, and we'll go from there. So I hope to see you in the workshop too later this summer. Take care. Bye.